guys, happy Friday. I'm back to continue reading in Lincoln's Grave Robbers, and I'll be starting on chapter 8 today. And before you think that I'm gross and never shower, I'm not wearing the same shirt 3 days in a row. I just recorded all my videos on Tuesday. So I do shower every day. I do change clothes, I promise. I just got inspired to read the rest or read some more of this story. So I made a few videos, same day. All right, moving on. Chapter 8, The Trap. As soon as the meeting was over, Schlegel slipped out of the hub and raced down dark streets toward Tyrell's office. Mullen and Hughes had said the job would be done very soon, but didn't name a date. So at that moment, Schlegel was the only one standing between the Coney men and Lincoln's body. Was he really worried about protecting Lincoln's remains? Or was he thinking he looked into a roper's dream, a nugget of gold that would vastly increase his value in the eyes of the Secret Service? We can't be sure. Schlegel leaped up the stairs to Tyrell's office. The agent was out of town on another investigation. The roper couldn't keep his explosive secret to himself. He found his friend Charles Dean and described the Hub gang's bizarre plot. Dean's advice: sit tight, say nothing, wait for Tyrell. But Dean couldn't keep the secret either. He told Leonard Swett, a fellow Chicago lawyer who'd been one of Abraham Lincoln's closest friends. Alarmed, Swett telegraphed a warning to members of the Lincoln Monument Association in Springfield. Swett explained that he wasn't sure how serious the threat really was, but added, perhaps the slightest intimidation of danger ought to induce proper safeguards, if the body is in a position where it could possibly be exposed to such a scheme. The body was most definitely exposed. The Monument Association members knew. They ordered Power to add a night watchman or two at the monument and keep them there until the attack is made or danger averted. Power did as he was told. After that, he later wrote, 2 men armed each with a revolver were kept there every night. The custodian patrolled the grounds too, making sure to arrange signals with the guards so the men could recognize each other in the dark cemetery. I was there at nearly all times of night myself to see that the watchmen were on duty. Power said, I had to be very careful about signals to avoid being shot on my own orders. And then this has a picture of the receiving vault at the Lincoln Monument. I don't know if you guys can see it. On October 26th, 2 nights after Schlegel's first learned of the plot, Tyrell was back in his Chicago office. He was sitting at his desk working late into the night on his daily report to James Brooks, the new chief of the Secret Service. The door opened and Schlegel charged in. Something's brewing down at the hub, he announced. Tyrell looked up from his papers. Not a Coney job, the roper said. Something much bigger. Tyrell listened to a few details, then cut in. He accused Schlegel of being drunk. Schlegel denied it, and he provided convincing details, like the fact that Hughes and Mullen had researched the law on grave robbing in Illinois and were pleased to find the crime was punishable by only 1 year in county jail. Tyrell was stunned. He needed time to think. He told Schlegel to play along with Hughes and Mullen and to keep in close touch. After Schlegel left, Tyrell picked up his pen and continued his report. Now, Chief, he began. Last but not least comes a matter reported to me this evening by Louis Schlegel. Tyrell laid out the incredible story. Schlegel also says they have some jimmies and 1 crowbar as tools for the job of breaking into the monument. They feel confident of success, saying that if they get caught, 'tis only 1 year in jail, and if they succeed, Ben will be liberated. So they're like, well, if we get caught, it's only 1 year in jail, and if we don't get caught, we get what we want, so can't be that bad. Deeming the matter of national importance, if they commit such a act without detection, I thought best to telegraph the facts as I did this evening to you. Tyrell sent his telegraph to Washington. Then he tried to get some sleep. In the morning, he'd have to go see Abraham Lincoln's son. And this picture I'm about to show you is Robert Todd Lincoln, who was Abraham Lincoln's son. Has a nice beard. At the age of 33, Robert Lincoln had already lived through several lifetimes worth of drama. Robert was a college student when the Civil War broke out, and he wanted to leave school and enlist in the Union Army. His father, the president, approved. His mother did not. The Lincolns had already watched 2 young sons die of disease, and Mary could not bear the thought of losing their eldest boy, which is the oldest. So Robert stayed at Harvard until he graduated in 1864 and entered law school. But his absence from the Army was becoming a national scandal. Newspapers called Robert a draft dodger and a coward. They accused the president of hiding his son in school while sending other men's boys out to fight and die. Mary finally relented, allowing Robert to join the Army in early 1865. When the fighting ended in April, he returned to Washington, D.C., and on the night of April 14th, he was spending a quiet evening in his White House bedroom when he heard people shouting that his father had just been shot at Ford's Theater. Jumping into a carriage, he raced to the scene and was told the president had been taken to a house across the street. He tried to enter, but soldiers blocked the door. "It's my father!" Robert shouted. "My father!" Robert stumbled inside, stepping over pools of blood on the floor. Already weeping, he ran to his dying father. Later that month, Robert moved to Chicago with his mother and younger brother, Tad. Robert finished law school, got married, and had a child of his own. Then, Tad got sick and died at the age of 13. Robert watched his mother sink into a grief so deep she could barely function. Okay, so Tad, the younger brother, was 18, not 13. I can't read, apparently. He was 18, and Robert was 33. So big age difference in these children. And remember, they lost some boys in between because of disease. They didn't have, modern medicine like we do today. They didn't have advanced hospitals. So that was pretty common for parents to lose their children. So anyway, his mother sinks into a grief, and she is so sad and depressed that she can barely function. Fearing she might take her own life if left alone, Robert decided his mother had to be committed to a mental institution. But Mary didn't want to go. Robert needed a court to declare her legally insane. So Mary was dragged into court, and the whole nightmare played out in the newspapers, which pained Robert as a cold-blooded villain for testifying against his heartbroken mother. "Oh, Robert," Mary cried, "to think that my son would ever have done this." The jury ruled that Mary was mentally ill, and the judge sent her to an asylum. She got out 4 months later and moved to France. By the fall of 1876, Robert Lincoln had 3 young children and a successful law practice in Chicago. Aside from the fact that his mother refused to speak to him, his life was finally going well. Then Patrick Tyrrell showed up at his office. Tyrrell told Robert what he'd learned from Louis Schlegels. Robert was horrified and urged Tyrrell to protect his father's grave at all costs. Tyrrell promised to do so, assuring him that night guards had already been assigned to patrol the monument grounds. The next step, Tyrrell said, was to get rid of the guards. When Robert objected, Tyrrell explained his thinking. The gang at the hub seemed determined to steal Lincoln's body. Night guards could postpone the attempt, but probably not forever. The only way to end the danger once and for all would be to lure the criminals into the monument and catch them in the act. Robert didn't like this at all, but he trusted Tyrrell and gave his permission. Word was sent to Power in Springfield. The night guards were sent home. Now remember, this isn't a graveyard like you're thinking in your head probably. This was kind of like a building that they had to go into to steal the body. So they would go in, and then someone would shut the door and capture them while they were inside. So it wasn't like they could just run. Tyrrell was taking charge of the case, though technically he wasn't supposed to. As a Secret Service operative, his job was to disrupt the distribution of counterfeit money. Nobody told him to chase body snatchers. I love that they called them body snatchers. I love that term. It's very funny. It makes me think they're just going around grabbing bodies out of the ground. In his update to Chief Brooks that night, Tyrrell asked for guidance. "Chief, I do not know your views of what my action should be in a matter. Not exactly a counterfeiting case, yet they are well represented in this matter. But, sir, I consider it of national importance. Should such an attempt be made, and there should be a national hanging be for those who make the attempt, I shall await your instructions and be governed thereby." Brooks got the telegram, read it, and set it aside. He thought Tyrell was overreacting to wild rumors that probably amounted to nothing. So Tyrell thinks that they should be hanged, I don't know the proper term, for trying to steal Lincoln's body. Tyrell tried to focus on other cases while awaiting word from Washington. Schlegels, meanwhile, returned to the hub for a series of backroom meetings with Hughes and Mullen. Everything was gone over carefully, Schlegels later said of his strategy sessions at the hub, and the conclusion reached that there were no chances of detection at all. There were no guards at the monument, and all there was to do was to go there, shoulder the casket, and carry it off. During one of these meetings, Herbert Nelson showed up to brief the team on the Lincoln Monument layout. To help the team, he'd agreed to go to Springfield and take a look, acting like just another tourist. "It's a terribly solid-looking pile," Nelson said of the monument, but there were really only two serious obstacles: the steel door of the tomb chamber, and the heavy marble sarcophagus enclosing Lincoln's casket. "Hughes and Mullen are very good burglars," Schlegels later explained, although not capable of any work beyond an ordinary housebreaker. They were going to have to go through metal and stone. This would require special tools, maybe even explosives, to blast open the marble box. "You want a man of talent," Schlegels told the gang, "someone who specialized in that sort of work." "What they needed, said Schlegels, was a quality craftsman." The others agreed. Schlegels was ready with his suggestion: none other than Billy Brown. Schlegels was used to making it up as he went along. No one told him to encourage the team to bring in a fourth man, but he sensed that they were going in that direction, and he decided he'd feel safer if the fourth man was someone he knew. Billy Brown was the man he'd supposedly teamed up with to rob the Wisconsin tannery. Actually, no such robbery had occurred. The man Schlegels called Billy Brown was really a law-abiding bricklayer and friend named Bill Neely. "He is straight, and I know he could be trusted," Schlegels later said of his choice. What made Brown perfect was his fluency in rough street language. "He can talk crooked," explained Schlegels. He had driven a hack and learned all the slang. Schlegels told Brown he was working for the Secret Service and assured his friend that he too could make a bit of money as a roper. He persuaded Brown to agree to play a cracksman, then talked Tyrell into putting Brown on the Secret Service payroll. Tyrell didn't mind the idea of having another man inside the gang. Next step, sell Brown to Hughes and Mullen. "I took Hughes down to my house," Schlegels remembered, "and gave him an introduction to Brown. And Hughes took him up to the hub for the purpose of showing him to Mullen, and they became satisfied that he was all right. He knew just what he was to do, as I had given him instructions." Convinced Brown was a skilled crook, the Coney men started asking his advice about getting into Lincoln's marble sarcophagus. "A hole could be drilled in it," Brown told them, "and powder put in and fused, and the whole thing blown to pieces." Mullen and Hughes were satisfied. Brown helped the gang gather the necessary tools: saws, files, drills, gunpowder, and about 6 feet of fuse. Everyone was starting to feel very confident. I wonder if they get in. I think they're going to get to the body, but I don't think they're necessarily going to steal the body. I think something's going to go wrong in their plan, especially because they have 2 people on their team that are lying and making stories up. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens. All right, guys, you have a great Friday and a fantastic weekend, and we will see you again on Monday. Bye.